and welcome to A Woman's Heart. I'm Lisa Granger. We all know health and wellness are important, and I had the privilege of speaking with Shemane Nugent about some of the lessons she learned after surviving a life-threatening illness with toxic mold. She is passionate about helping others discover how to live life abundantly well, and you can watch A Woman's Heart with Lisa Granger on YouTube now. Check it out. Welcome to A Woman's Heart. I am very excited about this conversation. We have Shemane Nugent here on the show, and we're going to get to talk about her book. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa. I appreciate it.
You are very, very welcome. Now, I always like to get to know you a little bit more and let my audience get to know you. So I ask for you to tell a little bit about yourself, and I would ask for something fun, and you can do the other, or we've both discovered that both of our husbands like Broncos. So or if there's something else fun.
And there's a lot of fun things about me. And you know what? If it's not fun, I don't know that I want to do it. In fact, I shared with you that I'm going through a little bit of a Facebook hack and potentially much worse, but you do have to put fun in your life. And so one of the fun things that I do, you and I have in common, your daughter teaches Zumba. I teach Zumba.
Yes.
I trained Zumba instructors in Australia, London, Paris, and all over the United States. Developed a program with and for Zumba and curves and traveled all over doing that. So those are types of things that take me away from the stresses of getting hacked and things like that. Another fun fact about me that you might not know, I used to race motocross.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you used to race motocross. Very good. Well, that is definitely exciting. And in the book, it talks about you're a bow hunter. And that is a big skill. It's a very different kind of hunting. My kids we have some friends that are avid hunters, but they don't do it with bow and arrow. That's a little too precise.
It's, you know what? It is difficult.
Yes.
But I kind of learned backwards. My husband was a bow hunter. I had never hunted, never went to a concert before I met him. And so this was kind of, a whole new world for me. But I learned that bow hunting requires a couple of things: stealth and grace. It's very difficult, but the other thing that it does, it's very calming and peaceful.
Yeah.
And you can't have your phone dinging all the time. You can't have conversations. You can't listen to music. And it requires you to just sit and listen to God's great design and watch wildlife. It's exciting and enthralling to be able to be within 20 yards of an animal. It's amazing.
And I like how you talked about the importance of nature. And you do have a new book. You've got several books that are out. The latest one is Abundantly Well, and you talk a lot about the health and wellness. And one of the first things that struck me was it wasn't just food and exercise. You really had you talked about food and you talk about exercise, but it really was much more of a whole body, like the whole body, the mind, the spirit, the soul, as the whole thing in this book. And I would love to know, why did you want to make sure that you covered everything in the book?
Well, I've been in the health and fitness industry for 44 years, but who's counting, for a long time. And I realized that not only myself, like in high school and in college, I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And trying to lose weight, I remember praying, God, please make me wake up 20 pounds lighter. I remember that when I was in high school.
That would be nice.
I know, right?
Sometimes that would be very nice.
Well, certain things happen, but you could look great in your workout gear, but not be happy inside, not have that peace beyond understanding that only God can provide. And if you are constantly bombarding your thoughts with negativity, which I think we all are. I just had a conversation with a friend who, several actually, are incredibly anxious right now. I think I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, so we can go down that rabbit hole another time. But I do think that what we put into our body, that if you look at the chemicals in foods that are in a box on a shelf, for months or even years, is that good fuel for your sacred temple? No. And, it is a mind, body, spirit approach to supernatural health and living abundantly well, not just being, ready for that bikini close up, which I'm not going to be doing anytime soon. I will promise you that. And if you see it, it's AI. It's not me. I just want to be well. And for those in your audience who don't know my story, I got sick and almost died from toxic mold.
Yeah.
And I had 4 different types of mold in my bloodstream and also had pre-emphysema, and I don't smoke. Here I was, once named Detroit's most physical female, and I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. So what good does it do if I look great in a bikini? If I'm not truly healthy, if I'm sad or depressed or disappointed. And I talk about in my book some personal experiences that it made me consider, like, what is life worth living if I feel so badly inside?
Yeah.
So I share all of this in my book. It's got to be a mind, body, spirit approach. And I think that this is what makes my book Abundantly Well different from, there's a lot of great exercise books out there and videos, a lot of nutrition and recipe books and things like that. And a lot of emotional and mindfulness type books out there. But I have learned through my journey, and I share my journey with you, and I share everything from what I eat to what I do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'm not perfect. 80% of what I do and what I eat is pretty clean, pretty healthy.
Yeah.
20%, I like cupcakes and chocolate chip cookies and lasagna and chips and dip and all of that fun stuff. But I think life is meant to be living in balance and honoring God. And for those times, going back to grace and stealth, we have to give ourselves grace. We can't be so hard on ourselves, or when we do mess up, God is right alongside of us, and he just wants a conversation. He wants to be with us. So I'm excited for your audience to be able to check out my book. I hope they do.
Yeah. And I liked the 80-20. You mentioned the 80-20 principle. The 80% you eat good, you eat clean, you eat healthy, but there is that 20%. And I have to say, I kind of expected that chocolate chip cookie recipe in the back of the book, but I will settle with the peanut butter and chocolate recipe that you have in there. So you have a lot of practical things in the book with a couple of recipes and some workout ideas, and also the journaling and making notes that are very practical in the back of the book, which I absolutely enjoyed. And also you talked about, with the mind body, one of the things that stood out to me was you talked about the forgiveness and creating boundaries and what you learned through all of those different things. And I actually underlined the quote that says, prolonged adversity, anger, and bitterness grow like weeds within the body, choking off joy and wellness. And you had to make your emotional and physical health a priority so that then you could be a service to others.
Yeah, I also realized that within our lives, I did a podcast yesterday with a young person. Okay. And he said, do you have any advice for young people? And I said, be of service. Think about the gifts and talents that God has blessed you with. You might not think it's a big deal that you can make cookies, that you're an incredible cookie maker, or help people. You love to organize. What if you volunteered at a nursing home to help organize people's closets and lives, or just go to someone that who is struggling and say, I'm going to help run errands for you. What do you need today? Even if you did it once a month. Yeah. I realized that, the charities that I'm involved with and the things that I've done, those are the most gratifying, and you can't put a price tag on that. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, it is. And I have noticed that if I'm having a bad day, if I can go and do something nice for somebody, even if it's as small as just sending somebody a text that says, hey, I'm thinking of you. I hope you're having a great day. Just doing something simple like that, I can go, oh, okay, I feel a little better as well. And I know there have been times where I've been able to give a nice gift to somebody, and I was I think I was as excited or more excited to give them the gift than they were to even receive it.
Yeah.
And so
When you
it is.
when you come from a place where you want to be of service to others, and I think there's a phrase like, if you're going to a wedding or an event or whatever, and you need help with styling, they'll say, well, what's the look you're going for? The look I'm going for in life is well done, good and faithful service. Now, I'm not perfect. I
None of
keep
us are.
trying though. Every day I keep trying.
Yeah, well, and none of us are perfect. And that's just a completely unrealistic expectation that probably just causes more stress and more wear and tear on us. And you talked about the stress and a lot of how that goes into, I think one of the things that I really appreciated about the book was that it wasn't just about the food and exercise, but even with the food or the exercise, they were small suggestions. It wasn't a cookie cutter, just do this. You gave a
Right.
lot of different suggestions to really find out what works for you.
Yes. A lot of people have asked me over the years, what do you do? What diet do you do? Well, name a diet. I've been on it. I've tried them all. And in fact, in the 90s, there was a cookie diet. I did that.
Oh,
It
oh,
didn't work.
no.
It didn't work.
I was going to say,
So I
darn.
lay out, I lay out everything that I'm doing now. And here's the thing: we all have different genetics, different backgrounds, different environments. So for me to tell you different likes. So for me to tell a guy who doesn't like to dance, the only way you're going to lose weight is if you do Zumba. Well, that's not going to work for him.
No.
So the beginning of the book, I start with a question, an acronym, WYA. Where are you at? Where are you at? Let's talk about where you're at in, maybe you've never worked out before. Maybe you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and you've been of service to other people. You've been putting the needs of your children and your spouse before yours, and you don't even know where to start. I'm going to walk alongside you. I'm going to find out where you're at, help you find out where you're at.
Yeah.
And then let's determine what works in the pockets of your time. Maybe you don't have 2 hours a day to go to the gym. I don't. I wish I did. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
And a personal chef and all of that stuff. That would be great, but that's not reality for me. And I know for a lot of other people. So let's find out what you can do, what you like to do. And then here's the good part: mix it up, switch it up.
Yes.
Like not just one activity, not just lifting weights. Our bodies have this amazing ability to adapt to different stresses, physically and emotionally. And that makes us stronger. When you lift weights, it actually tears down the muscle fibers. You let it rest, and then it grows back stronger. So let's say you start on a workout program, January, you start running. And wow, you made some amazing, you lost a pant size or whatever it is. Then a month later, you reach a plateau.
Yep.
That is God's great design, because now you have to increase the intensity, the duration, or the frequency with which you work out so that you can grow back stronger. So I always encourage the 3 different elements to a great workout is cardiovascular. You got to have cardiovascular exercise to get the hearts and lung going. You have to have strength training to increase bone density and the muscles as we age. This is so important for those of us in our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And flexibility, another thing. So all 3 of those components are really critical for a well-rounded workout program.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we end up being a little more heavy on one versus the other and may discount the others. And especially in pro sports, they may want to get really strong. But then if they don't work on the flexibility, they end up being more injury prone.
Yes.
And so it really is a matter of, you think flexibility, I don't know how many people would automatically just think of like a dancer or a gymnast, but you need flexibility to move around and get down on the floor with your grandkids.
Yes.
Be able to get back up, be able to bend down and put your shoes on. They're just very functional things that if you lose the flexibility somewhere, you go, oh, wow, I didn't realize I needed flexibility to put your pants on by yourself. Put your shoes on.
And that happens as we age.
Yeah.
I remember my husband had both of his knees replaced at the same time.
That's unusual for them to do that. Usually
At
do one
the
at a
same
time.
time.
Oh,
And,
ouch.
it was quite difficult. He couldn't put his socks on. He couldn't put his pants on. He couldn't do all that stuff. And those setbacks, like when I got sick and almost died from toxic mold, I couldn't get up out of bed. But I remember my son had a track meet, and it was after probably a couple of months after I was in the hospital for a month with pre-emphysema and a few other things, and fibromyalgia, insomnia, migraine headaches, a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home and thinking, I am going to that track meet. I am going to go there, get in the car and drive to the school. And then I drove to the school, and I look at the, track meets are outside, and you have to walk to the field where there's bleachers. I'm looking at those bleachers like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know how I have the energy. So when we have setbacks like that, and we're fortunate enough by God's grace to get healthy and well, that's why I wrote this book, Lisa. I made a pact, a promise to God that if I figured out how to lose weight and feel better, I would share it with other people. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do like that. You mentioned when your husband had the double knee replacement, the meditation practice that you used in there. I was like, I had never, I've heard of meditation. I've heard of relaxing. I've heard of mindfulness and different apps and all the, but I'd never seen one where they used the colors like you talked about. So I'm curious about the color visualization and how that helps.
I don't know specifically. It's just one of the things that I've done. It's kind of a distraction. Okay. A chiropractor did this with me one time. I tried everything for migraines. Okay. I went to chiropractors, doctors, migraine specialists, iridologists, had colonics. I've done everything. And this chiropractor, it worked for a minute. And so that's when I started doing it with Ted. It worked like to help distract me. Not only let's think of something else. Let's think of the air that you're breathing in and going through your body. It's a visualization technique. Yeah. And I'm sure, there are a lot of statistics that support that, but we think about, in the Bible, we're supposed to meditate on scripture, right? Yeah. Let's meditate on our overall health and well-being and our bodies. What areas, if we just stop and think about where are we, drawing tension, and I immediately go, okay, I gotta sit up straighter. Where is the pain in our body? If we focus on that pain and use some visualization techniques that I talk about in the book, if that helps you rather than taking a prescription drug, why not try it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved how the thinking of a dark color and then breathing in and with the light color overtaking it. And that I was like, I may have to try that sometime when I have some ache or pain or a headache or something like that. I was like that with the colors, because I like colors and pretty things. It was an easy thing to go, oh, okay, I could imagine a color and a shape and then that taking over, as opposed to just going, try to relax.
Right.
A little more.
Right. Don't look at the pink elephant. Don't look at the pink elephant,
And exactly. Yeah. I've told people, I say, you can't just say, don't think about something, because if I tell you don't think about a pink elephant, what did you do? You just thought of a pink elephant. Yeah. Don't think about the pain. Don't think about the pain. And you're like, okay, I'm totally concentrating on the pain at that point. And it makes it a lot more difficult. And you mentioned earlier when somebody asked you, what would you say to the younger people? And you said to be of service. And I think that ties in. You also talked a lot about how important it is to have a purpose. And you even quoted some statistics on it lowers the risk of mortality and cardiovascular disease. I talk a little bit more about just how important that is, serving others, but having a purpose behind it and what that does for our health.
I've worked with a lot of people, a lot of women, especially, whether it's in the health and fitness industry or some of the charities that I'm involved in, working with children, working with shelters for dogs and cats. And also there was a period of time when I was working with Gold Star Wives and Fort Hood. And I realized when they lost their husbands, they also lost a connection to the military, and they were kind of ostracized. Where did they go? What did they do? And it's so important, no matter where you're at in life, to find fulfillment and to, again, to be of service. Those are the types of things that, maybe it is a distraction from focusing on, when I'm teaching a group fitness class, when your daughter's teaching Zumba, I can't think about my problems, even though my Facebook got hacked, even though whatever, X, Y, or Z. I have to think about the lights, the music. Is the lighting okay? Is the temperature of the room okay? Is Susie bending her knees enough? What's the choreography? Because there are about 17 different songs in 1 hour of Zumba class. So that's 17 different choreographies that you have to memorize.
Yeah.
Not only memorize, but know what's coming next. It's an amazing opportunity to I can't worry about a text message. I can't get distracted during that time, but it is distracting me from the daily weight of what I might think could be dragging me down, and it's not. And I think, Jesus would love us to have a childlike mentality and to have fun and to give ourselves some grace. So, finding purpose in life for me, it's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep trying to get involved in charities. I'll tell you, I don't know how much more time I have, but I'd love to tell you one more quick story. Could I?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Please do.
After I got sick and almost died, I was recovering. We literally moved. We demolished our home that was once featured on MTV Cribs. And we were like, where do we live? Where do we go? And we had friends in Texas, and my husband had been going to Texas to go hunting, and I did like the warmer weather there. So we thought, let's go to Texas. And we had an opportunity to go to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio. And Ted is so good at talking to wounded soldiers, to children who have terminal illnesses and their families, and buoying their spirits. And he's just so good at that. At this point, this was in 2004. I never had an opportunity to get involved so much in charity work. When we went to Brooke Medical Center in San Antonio and see all these horrific injuries, there was a John Shranowski, 19-year-old John Shranowski, that was brought in the night before with 80% of his body burned.
Oh, gosh.
Ted put the gown on and the mask and the hat and the gloves and everything else, and went into John's hospital room to say some encouraging words to him.
Yeah.
And I stood outside the room with John's mom. And what do you say to the mom? What can I possibly say to relieve any stress that she's having, to help her? And I just said, Nancy, is there anything that you need? And she turned to me with kind of like a grin, but a look of determination, and said, my son's an outdoorsman. I can't imagine him staring at these four walls while he's in recovery, but he can't go outside and be exposed to direct sunlight. Meanwhile, there's no pavilion or patio that will shelter him from direct sunlight outside Brooke Army Medical Center. And I don't know where it came from, but I just went, Nancy, I'm going to build you a patio. And you know what, Lisa? It took me 3 years, but I built a patio at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio for John and for so many other wounded soldiers.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure there have been many people that have been enjoying that. And I love, because like you said, there's not really anything you can say except to just be there when somebody's going through something difficult like that. But to be able to do something practical, like provide a patio, is so incredibly meaningful and impactful. And I'm sure it makes you feel fulfilled and satisfied as well.
It really does. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's one other quick thing that I did want to touch on, because you mentioned several times in there about aging gracefully. And I know my mom has an old Irish proverb that she'll say every now and again. It says, do not despise getting old, for many are denied the privilege. And I also liked how you put it. It said, aging gracefully is the practice of looking at growing old as an amazing gift sparked with excitement.
Yeah. There are times I'm so blessed that my husband asks me to stop wearing makeup, stop getting my hair done, stop doing my nails, stop all that stuff. Why don't you just go all natural. And you know what? I have been so appreciative that, because I know people that do a lot of treatments and facelifts and things like that. And I'm going to focus on what I need to do right now. But you know what? I think it's a shame that covers of the magazines are showing models who are 15 or 20 years old and don't have wrinkles, don't have age spots, don't have gray hair, things like that. If we got back to exalting age and looking at, wow, these elderly people have so much wisdom.
Yeah.
So much to share with us. Some of the best times in my life were sitting and talking with my grandmother and listening to some of her stories and some of the things that she had done in her life.
Yeah.
And I wish I tell a story about Sister Madonna Buder in my book, who is dubbed as the Iron Nun. She started running in her 60s and she started doing triathlons and marathons in her 70s. Who does that?
Yeah, not me.
Why isn't she on the cover of Vogue?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I saw that and I was like, wow, that's such an inspiration. I don't, that's not going to be me, but no, what an incredible inspiration. And as I mentioned, one of the things I always like to ask everyone, it kind of circles back around to the purpose thing, but what would you say to encourage someone to pursue the passion that God has placed in their heart? Because you have been able to pursue that passion of wellness and sharing your journey with others. And what would you say to encourage someone else?
When I look at my purpose in life, sometimes even at 62, I go, I want to write more books. I've done a documentary. I want to make movies, faith-based films. There's so many things I want to do. Where do I go?
Yeah.
And it's brought back to my attention that, it's not like I wanted to be known as the mold lady, but I recently went to a mold conference and there's so many people who have been devastated by mold illness. And my other book, Killer House, I wrote a few years ago because I know all about mold. So if you want to recognize, remediate, and recover from toxic mold, get that book as well. Yeah. But I do talk about it in Abundantly Well. Abundantly Well is like what to do after you. The reason I wrote Abundantly Well is like, okay, it can't just all be doom and gloom and depressing.
Yeah.
How do I get people healthy again? And that's why I wrote Abundantly Well. But I think about my mess, the mess in my life, being sick and sickened from toxic mold. It's not glamorous.
No,
it's not. People might think, oh, she's married to a rock star. She's got it made. Really? That's a mess, but my mess became my message. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think if we look at our messes in life, maybe that can help somebody. Maybe you're getting through that mess can help somebody who's at where you were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally agree. I love how God will use that and take the messy moments of our life and use that to help other people. Well, Shemane, if somebody would like to get the book, connect with you, get some of your other books, find your documentaries, whatever, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
I have a show on Real America's Voice called Faith and Freedom every Sunday at 10 a.m. But if they go to realamericasvoice.com, you can get all my previous shows. And I've interviewed everyone from Charlie Kirk to Kirk Cameron, John Rich, athletes, celebrities, pastors. And so that's on Faith. That's on Real America's Voice every week. And also I've got a documentary called Killer House. That's at killerhouse.org. My website, ShemaneNugent.rocks, ROCKS, is getting updated within this next week, but I'm going to have all the information, including more information on my book and workouts and things like that. And you can get my books on Amazon.
Okay.
And I'm also on Instagram and a couple of other areas, but mostly Instagram right now.
Okay. Very good. Well, Shemane, thank you so much. I appreciate your willingness to share your journey, share all of your wisdom in that book. And I also greatly appreciate your taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
Thanks so much for joining me today on A Woman's Heart. I'm Lisa Granger. I hope you got a good tip that you can put into use right away from my conversation with Shemane. Information on how to connect with her or find her book is on my show notes and on my website, lisagranger.com. If you enjoy the show, you can find it on YouTube now at A Woman's Heart with Lisa Granger. Until next time, have a blessed day.